I've got some big ideas, but I'm still learning to work with corrugated plastic. And I'm still working out what I need in my toolkit. As I brainstorm simple projects, I think about practical applications. What do I need in my life that I haven't been able to find or haven't been willing to pay a high price for? Corrugated plastic is cheap, strong, and waterproof. Characteristics that make it well suited for making things to help with home brewing. I started with a basic bin for storing apples. Of course, bins like this have many uses. I made an explosion-proof box to make cleanup easy in the event that a bottle breaks. And I made a rack for drying bottles after washing. I think this is the tool I need for creasing corrugated plastic. It's heavy, but it has a pretty fine edge. This handguard might get in the way a bit. It might tempt me to use a hammer, or try a hammer, for making creases. Anyway, I think this is going to work. Let's try it out. I found a couple of ratcheting clamps cheap at the same flea market. These seem almost new. I think these will really help me hold things in place while I'm getting the zip ties ready. I don't know if they're strong enough to actually crush the little walls inside the plastic. That might be something I have to be careful about. I found some fairly sturdy-looking skewers at a secondhand store that might help me with putting holes in the plastic. I didn't find all of these new tools at the same time. I just had a chance to try out the clamps and the skewers at the end of these projects. I started out using the nail to make holes, although I added some padding to make it easier on the hands. I intended to file down the screwdriver to make a sort of improvised awl, but I couldn't do it. It's a pretty nice little screwdriver. I did end up using it to make the holes wider. I'm still using scraps of corrugated plastic to draw straight lines. The rest of my toolkit consisted of a tool for measuring, a tool for marking the plastic, a tool for cutting the plastic, and zip ties to hold it all together. In planning the bin, I decided to make it as big as possible, and I reminded myself of the dimensions of a full sheet of corrugated plastic. Then I measured some bins I had around the house to make decisions on mostly the depth. Once I decided how deep I wanted my bin to be, that also gave me the numbers for length and width, and it told me how I needed to draw lines onto the plastic for reference. The explosion-proof box needs to hold any liquid that ends up in it from a broken bottle. The apple bin doesn't need to do that, but I decided to use the apple bin as a sort of test run, so I built it the same way. But When I selected the sheet of plastic for the apple bin, I didn't worry about any holes that were there as a result of hanging it when it was assigned. I made no cuts in the plastic and just folded it into the shape of a box. Thus these angled creases. I'll show you how I folded it into shape, but first, let's see the new tool at work, putting the creases in the plastic. I found that it worked best to make 3 passes. In the first pass, I worked along the line that I had drawn as reference and just did my best to break the little walls inside the plastic. If the line ran parallel to the walls, then I sort of just put a dent between walls, which was much easier. I was surprised to find that some sheets required that I apply much more force than others. On the second pass, I partly fold the plastic using the chisel to make sure that the fold happens in the right place. Then, with a good crease in the plastic, I can go ahead and fold it all the way over. I'm showing you the creasing and folding of the explosion-proof box here. I just had better footage for that. As I mentioned, this box and the apple bin were constructed in the same way. Corrugated plastic wants to unfold, so I walked on my knees a few times along these creases, along these folds, in order to make this part easier. I used 3 zip ties on each end. One in the middle may have been enough. This little project, this apple bin, is probably 95% or more successful. Most of the reason for that is that I had such realistic goals. It's plenty strong enough to do its job well, and it's a simple enough thing to build. I made another one like this to use as a recycling bin. Another great use for a reused material like this. It doesn't need to be beautiful. In fact, it's better if it's not. It's unlikely to be stolen, and it's cheap and easy to replace. The topmost flap makes a perfectly serviceable handle, even when the bin is full of apples. Unfortunately, I didn't arrange the flaps properly on both sides of the bin. I made sure to do this right when I built the explosion-proof box. The explosion-proof box needs to be a fairly specific size to hold my bottles. I started by measuring the box the bottles came in, but those numbers are a bit awkward to work with. I wanted to make dividers in order to more securely hold the bottles when the box isn't full. So I had to take into account the thickness of corrugated plastic. That number is awkward too, 0.157 inches, or about 5/32. That's because the thickness of corrugated plastic tends to be in metric for some reason. 0.157 inches is 4 millimeters. The awkward box dimensions are probably due to the fact that I'm using 750 millimeter bottles. The numbers get a lot more friendly when I use the metric system. I was lazy and rounded 4 millimeters up to 0.5 centimeters. The box came out a bit larger than it needs to be, and the rounding doesn't fully account for it. I was also trying to compensate for the extra layers of plastic on the ends of the box. It is fully functional, however. I'll talk about what I can do to improve it later. I drew the box with an attached lid, but that would require sheets of plastic larger than I had available, so I went with just the basic box. I selected a sheet of plastic to work with that had holes that I could place well away from the bottom of the box. Here's a look at some of my new tools in action. The clamps help a lot. It's like having an extra pair of hands. Watching this now, I realize that I should probably pick up a rechargeable drill. There must be a bit that would make the process of making holes in the plastic much easier. I've made 4 of these beer boxes so far. I experimented with painting a couple of sheets black on one side. I used primer on the first one, but I realized that that probably isn't necessary. The signs are printed on one side with an ink that doesn't seem to come off or crack, so I just painted over that, and that worked just as well. I just used a basic can of spray paint. With a good plan in place, making the dividers was straightforward enough. It takes a while because there's a lot of cutting. And there's a decent number of pieces required for each box. The margin of error is not as tight as I thought it might be. I didn't really have to go back and make any of these notches wider to make everything fit. The first box I made was longer than it needed to be. There was a lot of wasted space that looked a lot like what you see on the left side of this box. By adding a couple more zip ties, I was able to compress those extra layers and make it look more like what you see on the right side of this box. By doing this, I was able to make the box a centimeter or 2 less long. I'm very happy with these boxes. I recently filled all 4 boxes with beer and put them away in the bottom of a cool closet while I went away for a month. When I got back, I found that one bottle had broken. The bottom of the box and all of the bottles were sticky, and the closet had a pleasant beer aroma, but no further harm was done. The bottle drying rack had some things in common with the dividers for the beer box. A good plan is always important. I'm still working in metric here. I needed something to catch the water, and I designed that so that it could double as a lid for the beer box. It fits well, but I've never actually used it as a lid. The drainer functions beautifully. The corrugated plastic is plenty strong enough for the job, even cut thin as this is. This may be something that I could buy cheap enough, but I haven't seen anything usable at any of the secondhand stores or flea markets. I looked at a lot of other design ideas, but in the end I went with the simplest approach. The result simply does the job that it was designed for very well. I consider all of these projects successful, and I'd recommend them to other home brewers. Thanks for watching. Hope it's been a good trip. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can be sure to hear about my next